Hello, party rockers who reside within a living space on this fine evening. It is time for another deck profile. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the new decks for Angel Feather from Client Selection Volume 1. So we're back on the Client Selection 1 deck profiles, and this time we're going to be taking a look at Malkuth Melekh. So this, as I said before, when I first deck profiled this deck way back in spring last year, this is a really cool new archetype to come out for Angel Feather. Giving robots to a overall waifu clan is a very good decision, and I support Bushrod in putting robots in every single clan, or nation for that matter. I think that's a really great investment, and there can only be great things that will happen. I am joking. Anyway, this deck I would say isn't particularly like a competitive beast compared to like Gabriel, but it's actually really good. I was surprised when I was playtesting this. I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like playing it. I was like, oh, I mean, this deck's probably more of like a casual fun deck to, you know, just have fun with, not necessarily like super competitive. I'm just going to treat it like a fun deck, like I treat Vermilion. But I was surprised this deck actually has some really cool and, you know, like complicated lines of play. Not necessarily like complicated lines of play, but like there's small things you do that have big implications. So let's just put it that way. So without any further ado, let's take a look. Also, this deck uses Protect 2. This is a Protect 2 build. Don't even think about Protect 1, all right? Okay, now that's sorted, let's go. And they're off. We're gonna start out here with the Malkuth Melekh. This is the original one. Hold on, we gotta add to the card slap counter so we make sure that our man manages to do his job right. So what does the original Malkuth Melekh do, in case you never saw this card before in your life? When placed on Vanguard Circle, count almost 2, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2, then you deal it 1 damage. If it's grade 3 or higher, you heal a card from your damage zone instead. So that's really nice because you basically get to going first, rush them down a little bit, give them a bit of extra push, and if not, then you heal and you put stuff into your drop zone by healing, which fuels his second skill, which is once per turn, Soul Blast 1, call up to 3 cards from your drop zone to Vanguard Circle, and 3 of your front row units get plus 5k until end of turn. And you also deal this unit 1 damage. So you heal 1 by riding when your opponent's on grade 3 or higher, but then you deal yourself 1 by reviving your stuff, which rips off his wings and blah blah blah. Anime, very cool. However, before in the past, you just dealt yourself a damage and stopped there. It was like a rescue check, so you got to trigger any kind of triggers, but now you can actually not take that damage and just rewrite grade 3s into the new one, which is Shin, Malkuth Melekh. So this card is really fantastic. It has the first skill, which is when checked for a damage check, when revealed for a damage check, if your Vanguard is Malkuth Melekh, so this one specifically, then you can discard a card from your hand to ride him as stand. That is really nice because you basically get to generate 2 protects in 1 turn, which is really good for this deck, because he says with the second skill, during your turn, if you have 2 or more protect markers on your circles, all your front row units get plus 10k power. Damn, that's plus 15k power with this. That's pretty damn chunky. That's actually pretty big, considering that Protect 2 also gives an extra 5k, so that's plus 20k per column on your first grade 3 turn. That's actually amazing. And then all units on rear circles with a Protect marker cannot be retired by any player's card effects. That's also really cool, because that was one of the things with this deck, is that it was always a Protect 2 deck. But the thing was about it being a Protect 2 deck is that it basically lacked that ability to actually like consistently intercept with those cards that were on the Protect 2s, and like you just get them retired or attacked into and stuff like that. They just cannot be retired by any player's card effects. They have to attack into them or something like that, and they cannot pop like your back row now with effects, and all of it is just really great. So this card gives you the sort of sustain that you want, and basically every turn you want to be going into the Arcader, setting up this at the top of your deck with your other skills like your grade 2 and your grade 1, and then you basically re-ride, generate 2 protect markers, protect 2s per turn, and then you get to pump your front row by 15k plus extra power from the protect 2s. It's overall just really great. Now this deck has 1 flex spot. After you put everything into it, you have 1 flex spot. Some people play an extra grade 1, some people play an extra grade 2, and some people play an extra grade 3 in Hamiel or the Feather Palace. So this deck already has a lot of Sentinel Denial, but this gives you extra power and Sentinel Denial as well. So the Feather Palace says when attack, Soul Blast 2 grade 3s, and as you probably figured, we make a lot of grade 3s in this deck in the Soul. Face down all the cards in your damage zone until end of that battle. This unit gets plus 20k and a crit, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels from their hand. So that basically allows you to finish games. And you don't really go into this card that much because you have the grade 2s that have Sentinel Restrict, but the extra crit and power on this definitely makes it feel a bit Hamiel-y, but it's not as crazy as in a Gabriel deck because you're not like rescue checking a bunch of crits onto it. But Soul Blasting 2 grade 3s is pretty easy in this deck. Of course, if you don't like the Feather Palace, you can play the Hamiel as well, or just play any other tech instead, but that is the grade 3s. So let's get on to the grade 2s now. All right, looking at the grade 2s, we're going to take a look at the new one from Client Selection Volume 2, which is the Holy Lord Angel. So this card is actually pretty good. It's basically a searcher. So when placed, look at top 7, reveal a Malkuth Melekh and its name from among them, put into your hand, shuffle your deck, reveal up to 1 normal unit from your hand, put on top of your deck. This ability may only be used with the same card name once per turn. That sounds like a talk to your doctor before using this medicine kind of thing in an ad. But this is really nice because you basically get to top 7 search for one of your Malkuths. So sometimes you need the Shin Malkuth, sometimes you need the regular one just to ride it first, and you get to stack it. So either you can retrieve it, you know, by using the Malkuth, so you can stack it on top, right? Use this skill to damage yourself and then, you know, trigger this, for example. But sometimes if you're lacking the grade 3 in hand, you can just, like, you know, stack the grade 3 on top and then just drive check it. So of course your opponent knows what the drive check is and they can guard it exactly. But there are situations where that comes up. And you do want to use this all the time because being able to stack this with the Shin Malkuth Melekh in order to actually trigger it and re-ride is just really, really good. So yes, this card is indeed very nice and just a good grade 2 all over. Then another grade 2 that is basically a staple in Angel Feather right now, as I said, as soon as this card was revealed, is the Yafkiel. So Yafkiel is fantastic. When placed, Vanguard Rigor Circle Combats 1 gets 3k until end of turn, return a card from your damage zone into your hand, and if you return a card, deal 1 damage to your Vanguard, and there's a named once per turn. So of course, you ride it or you call it, you counterblast 1, you add the counterblasted card to hand or anything that's face down basically to deal yourself 1 damage, and if you check a heal, you heal, if you check a draw, you draw, if you check a crit, you give something a crit. So this card of course is a huge staple in this clan in any build basically, whether standard or premium, whether Gavriel or anything that isn't Gavriel, and that also makes her pretty damn expensive because she is that good. Yeah, so this is good because you can also add your Malkuth Melekh to your hand, you can add basically anything you want from your damage zone that you need in your hand, such as the Malkuth Melekh Searcher as well, or just some triggers into your hand like a PG to actually protect yourself. So that's also a really nice factor about this deck. And then the final grade 2, which I think a lot of people would expect from a Malkuth Melekh deck, is Amputation Angel. So Amputation Angel, in my opinion, the MVP of this deck, because she says if you have a protect marker in the same column as this unit, she gains plus 15k power. So she's a 24k attacker. Keep in mind that Malkuth Melekh, if you re-ride, basically gives you 15k that turn as well. So she's 24, that puts her through 39, a protect 2 on her circle gives her 44, with a boost she can go over 50 with Sentinel Restrict with that second skill, which says during the battle attacked, if you have 3 or more protect markers on your circles, basically if you're on turn 4, your opponent cannot call sentinels from their hand. So this is really nice because you can set up 2 of her on both of your rearguard circles and just ask for raw shield every time, and they have to drop their entire hand to guard her. And I've even faced decks like Chronojet, you know, some of the best decks in the meta right now that actually, like, they can barely keep up with this deck because of how much shield you ask from so early onwards, or you just push them to 5 really early and then they start sweating. So this card is honestly really fantastic, and Amputation just puts in really great work. So yeah, definitely very important card. I know that some of these cards are a little bit more expensive like Yafkiel, but honestly, this is, in my opinion, like as refined as I could get with this deck. And later we're going to talk about mulligans and like some of the combos. Not many combos per se, but there are some nice things about this deck that make it feel quite intricate. All right, let's move into the grade 1s, and of course first things first we can take a look at is the grade 3 searcher for Angel Feather, which is Black Call Nakir. If you don't know this card, it's pretty damn self-explanatory. During your turn, if a new card was put into any player's damage zone this turn, she gets plus 5k, so pretty consistent 13k attacker, especially for this deck that, you know, usually puts 1 card at least per turn into their damage zone. And then of course when placed from hand, like a top 5 for grade 3, put into your hand, and if you did, discard a card. This is quite good because you can actually discard your Shin Malkuth Melekh to then stack it with our other grade 1 that we're going to take a look at right now, which is a new one from Clan Selection, which is Persistence Angel. So Persistence Angel is actually pretty damn decent. Once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw a card, and then discard a card from your hand, and then put up to 1 Malkuth Melekh and its card name from your drop zone on top of your deck. This card is what adds a lot of the little complexity to this deck, because you get to both stack your top deck with Malkuth Melekh in order to actually like be able to, you know, trigger the Shin Malkuth Melekh and stuff like that. But on top of that, you can, like, when it comes back to your turn, on like turn 4 for example, re-ride from hand the regular Malkuth Melekh, then use the skill to Soul Blast out the Shin Malkuth Melekh, draw a card, discard a card, and then use the Shin Malkuth Melekh that you just Soul Blasted to put on top of the deck to then trigger off of the Malkuth Melekh second skill to deal yourself a damage and then re-ride. On top of that, sometimes you need to Soul Blast with him the old Malkuth Melekh and then stack that and add it to your hand with the grade 2. So what you sometimes do is you Soul Blast out the old one in order to re-ride next turn, and then you use this effect to put the old Malkuth Melekh on top of the deck, and then you use the grade 2, this one, to actually like put it on top and then search it out from the top 7, and that actually works really nicely. So that way you can actually confirm that you have it, and then you use something like the grade 3 searcher to add it to your hand, or you use the Yafkiel because you know for a fact that it's in the top of your deck to also add it to your hand, for example. So it's really nice that you have this little like play to do in order to make sure you're always rewriting and like writing and making 2 protects per turn. So I really like that thing about this deck. It adds some like extra level of consistency that I feel like I didn't expect to see in this deck. And then finally, I am of course running the Sexual Angel as well. I'm a big fan of this card. Basically, she can intercept from the back row in which a protect marker exists in that column. So even if you have a protect marker in the front row of the column she's in, she can intercept from the back row, which is really, really nice. So she's normally a 10k interceptor, but if you give her like a protect 2, that's a 20k interceptor, which is basically as good as your heal. So we can tank a lot of different decks. Hell, even Gabriel you can tank because you're intercepting all the time. You're not guarding from hand. So Hamiel, you know, you just tank everything she throws at you with all your protect 2s. They don't have any retire in their deck, so you're basically just like tanking. They might attack your rears to try to like make sure that doesn't happen, but then you just give more of your protect 2s to the back row and intercept from the back row with this huge Sexual Angel, and that's really nice. And of course, all these cards you can revive every turn with the Malkuth Melekh, 3 of them to be precise, and that makes it very, very cool. Triggers, I don't think they've changed much since last time. I think they're actually the same as they used to be. So we're running 8 crit, as you can see here, 4 heal, 4 draw PGs, and the 1 starter. So very self-explanatory. This deck is not as aggressive as Gabriel, therefore we don't need to run the super aggressive lineup of like 16 crit, 12 crit or whatever. I think running this is actually pretty fine because you get the draws, you get the PGs to sustain yourself, you get the heals to actually like trigger them every now and again to actually make sure you survive because you're such a tanky deck. Like this is the opposite of Gabriel. This is a super tank that has huge attacks that don't swing for huge crits, but they swing for a lot of like big like guard restrict. And you're sacrificing the extra PGs from protect 1 for protect 2s, therefore the, you know, the draw PGs are pretty much appreciated. And so as I said earlier, this deck doesn't really have any like super complicated lines of play. You basically like go into your regular Malkuth Melekh, and then, you know, you can almost 2 to heal or deal your opponent a damage, and then use the second skill to revive stuff. So for example, you know, we do the skill, we're gonna Soul Blast, you know, and revive 3. So for example, let's say, you know, in our drop zone, we can revive something like this and the Sextio. Let's say we have a protect 2 here, and then we can revive like the Yafkiel, and because Yafkiel isn't when placed from hand, you can actually use her when revived from the drop zone as well, which is actually really, really nice. So you can actually like get that effect off. And then when you deal yourself a damage, you know, you're gonna put this on top of your deck, being able to damage check it and then rewrite it and give extra protect and power to your front row, which is really nice. And of course, the setup cards for this play are the Holy Lord and the Persistence. So Persistence can be just on the field, you know, earlier you just Soul Blast 1, draw a card, discard 1, and stack the Malkuth Melekh, you know, the Shin Malkuth on top in order to actually be able to go into it. Otherwise, if you don't have it, you can just call out the Holy Lord, you know, before doing your revives or whatever, or even from the revive, because it doesn't have to be placed from hand, and then you basically just search your top 7 for Malkuth Melekh, and you get to stack the Shin Malkuth Melekh in order to go into it. So that part is pretty simple. But then let's say, you know, you intercept with everything and like, you know, your whole field is empty now because you essentially just, you know, tanked a big turn. So now when you stand and draw, you'll be sitting on the Shin Malkuth Melekh. But then like some things to consider, for example, before you go into your next turn, you know, before you pass turn, to make sure that you can keep rewriting if you don't have a regular Malkuth Melekh in your hand, is like, for example, to use the Persistence Angel, if you haven't used it already, to Soul Blast out the old Malkuth Melekh, and then, you know, basically just get to draw 1, discard 1, and put a Malkuth Melekh on top. So you can put this on top of your deck, and then you can just call the Nakir to make sure that you actually hit the old Malkuth to put into your hand to be able to rewrite next turn. And then next turn, once you're actually on your next turn, you can basically use this skill again to Soul Blast this out this time, and then draw 1, discard 1, and put this on top of the deck to then Soul Blast 1, deal yourself a damage, and go into this as well. So there's no like super complicated combos. This is like the most optimal board you're probably going to be sitting on. And so the first couple of protects are generally going to go like to the front row rear guards, because you want to protect them from being retired. And so you're going to put them here and be able to actually like buff up these amputations. And so make sure that you're not asking for the guard restrict just yet, but soon you are. And then when you rewrite on your turn 3, you're going to slowly start to stack them up. So here, for example, if you have like Sexuals and stuff already ready to put them into play, you can give them to the back row to make these into, you know, essentially 20k interceptors, which is really, really huge, as I said earlier. Or sometimes, especially on the rewrite, you can even put them on like 2 times to make sure that this delivers the finishing blow if you put a crit on it or something like that. So that way you can kind of stack them around like that. Sometimes you can even spread them super, super hard depending on the matchup to like this basically. And then every turn with your Malkuth Melekh revive, you're like reviving a Sextio and 2 amputations, or depending on your hand, you can revive it a bit differently. You can sometimes just like revive the Yafkiel instead of another grade 2, or the Feather Palace that we looked at earlier as well for a potential finisher. So there's a lot of little things you can do with this deck, and I think that's what makes it really, really nice. All right, a quick shuffle, and let's take a look at a quick mulligan. You know, nothing too complicated in this deck. I think you guys already got the general idea of how this deck wants to proceed. So let's draw our 5 cards, and and take a look. So this is a pretty interesting start. We generally here honestly can keep the Yafkiel. It's actually ride her and use the skill and just persistence as our grade 1 here for the turn. And then let's see what we get, because we want the regular Malkuth in our hand more so than others. We have the Shin Malkuth, so we're gonna have to try and dig into that later on. So this is not actually a very optimal starting hand. So let's see. We draw. All right, that's still not super optimal. We ride into this as our grade 1. We draw a card. We have a Yafkiel here, so we're not going to be able to do too much with this hand, but potentially next turn we're going to be able to spiral into something. And so let's say we went first, so we just pass, we take a damage, it's a crit, so we're going to add that with our Yafkiel later, and then we draw into the Malkuth Melekh here. So then we're going to, of course, ride, count almost 1, add this to our hand, and then take a damage. Oh, it's a crit, you can give it to Vanguard. That's actually the best case scenario probably. But then you don't really do much else. Like, this deck doesn't really have much early games. So just kind of like swing, do a drive check, see what you draw into. And so in situations where you don't have Malkuth Melekh, you kind of just have to go into it. Sometimes it might even be worth it to guard with the Shin Malkuth to G-assist for the regular one, because you really need to sit on this one first. That's kind of the weakness of this deck. And that's why you need to, like, we run 4 of the grade 3 Searcher and like 4 of the grade 2 like Malkuth Melekh Searcher to make sure that we hit the first Melekh first before we go into the Shin one. So that's really, really important in how you play out your turns. But then of course, if let's say, you know, we get crit next turn, so we take 2 damage, we check this on damage check, but we're not sitting on the Malkuth Melekh, so we can't use it. And then we get the grade 2 Searcher here as well. So then we just, you know, take our hand and, oh, we got another Malkuth Melekh. That's very nice. We ride into this, you know, put a Protect 2 on the side. Let me grab one out real quick here. So we put a Protect 2 on the side, and because we went first, we count almost 2 and we deal 1 damage to our opponent. And then probably in previous turns, I would have actually guarded a bit aggressively. So like, for example, dropping these 2 as guard to revive them later on. And so now we're in this weird situation where we can't actually put this Malkuth Melekh on to our top of the deck, but there is a workaround. So we're going to just use this skill actually to make sure we Soul Blast this card. And so what we're going to do here is, of course, you know, revive our 3. So we're going to revive this and this and this and take our damage. So we're not going to take a Malkuth Melekh in the damage zone. We're going to go up to 4. That's no problem here. So we're going to take that as damage, and that's okay. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to use the Persistence Angel to Soul Blast one more time and get the Yafkiel out of there, Yafkiel rather, draw 1, and then discard 1. We're going to discard this Malkuth Melekh and then resolve the rest of the skill to put it on top of the deck. And now what we're going to do is we're going to call out the Yafkiel that we had in our hand from earlier, and we're going to use her skill. We're going to just count almost 1, add one of the cards from our damage zone into our hand. You know what, maybe I want a defensive card. I think I want to take the critical here to guard with, and then we're going to deal ourselves a damage. Oh, would you look at that? We checked a damage check Malkuth Melekh. We can just use a skill to discard 1. Let's say discard the crit here and just go into it and make a second Protect 2. And so everything is fine and dandy. So now we can stack the second one. I don't know, we can just keep putting it on the front row to have a nice little front. And there you go. So Yafkiel gives you this extra little reach in case you didn't reach it normally. Like, of course, you want to normally just stack this by having Persistence early or having the grade 2 that helps you set it up early. So one of these as well. But this is one of the situations where if you don't have the optimal like starting hand, you can still find a workaround just like this. So I hope you guys got something interesting out of this deck profile. I think it's a really, really fun deck. I've really been enjoying Malkuth Melekh ever since it first came out. And honestly, with this new support, I've been enjoying it even more so. So it's definitely been an amazing deck, and it's really, really fun to play. If you have a Malkuth Melekh deck laying around from, you know, way back in May when Astral Force came out, or whenever it was that it actually released, I can't really remember now, I definitely recommend picking up the new stuff because it's really, really cheap actually to upgrade this deck, and it really pushes it into a pretty good tier 2 deck, honestly. Like, I can see people bringing this to tournaments and actually expecting to do pretty well because of how tanky this deck can be. So maybe at some point, if I can convince my local friends, I can record a gameplay video for you guys with a deck like this, because it's really, really fun, to be honest, and I overall really enjoy it. So I hope you guys can give it a spin, maybe try out some other decks. There's definitely some space to explore some different cards, but I think that overall a lot of the cards that I play as a 4 of are part of a very, very nice, lean, cohesive package that you want to play. And cards like Yafkiel really help you to reach that win con of just like rewriting, you know, that Shin Malkuth every turn and going into the regular Malkuth every turn and just winning through that. So that's gonna be it for this video though. If you guys want to pick up any of these cards, if you haven't already, go to parkage.com and you can use the discount code DifferentFight for a 5% discount at checkout. They still have Clan Selection Volume 1 cards available and Clan Selection Volume 2 pre-orders as well as overdress stuff on top of that. So if you're interested in anything, make sure you pick it up over there if you want to. But anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.